Hello. Now, while you are during your academic finishing of your academic structure or for your organization, you will have to write reports. You will have to write various forms of reports. It could be routine reports, periodic reports, annual reports, biannual reports, or your academic reports. Now, what is the methodology and procedure of writing these various types of reports? Business reports, we all know they play a significant role in the management of modern business. How you write your business report will depend upon the kind of report, the objective of the report, the format. In certain cases, there most of the reports have a set format, a layout which you have to follow. So you will have to check upon that and then design your report according to that. Writing report provides training in planned and orderly procedure. You write your report in a very systematic and orderly manner. Since you are putting it in a systematic and orderly manner, you yourself start thinking like that. Anything at home, anything at outside your work scenario, anything which is besides what you are doing in the organization, since it's a part of your thing, becomes part of your mental thought process system. You start thinking like that, putting everything in a sequence, putting everything in an order, number one, number two, number three. So similarly, when you have to do work at home or any event that you're organizing or any other thing, maybe it could be your travel, you just start thinking in a orderly manner. Okay, number one, tickets, number two, this, number three. It becomes a system with you. It becomes a system with your mind, because you are, if you, it depends upon how much reports you have written, how, what is the frequency of your writing all these. So it somehow develops and sharpens your skills of analytical thinking in a, so in this certain manner. Now, it reveals the gaps in reasoning and highlights the woolly thinking and identifies the faults in presentation. It will show you if you put something on paper and you reread it. You read it once you have put, when you're trying to edit it. It will show your gaps. It will show the way the gaps in your own thinking process. Okay, once you've written it, let it be. Read it after some time, because immediately if you read it, your mindset will be at the same way. But if you read it after a gap, if you give yourself some time and then you reread it, try and edit it and proofread it, you will see your own gaps in your reasoning, that these are the flaws. This is where I should not have done this. This is where I should have done it like this. So you see the gaps in your reasoning and you somehow develop a more clear thinking. If you develop a more clear thinking, there will be clarity in your writing also. Report writing, it develops the power of judgment, discrimination, and organization of ideas and presentation of details and communication. The various types of reports are the oral reports and the written reports. This is the demarcation or the classification of reports on the basis of how and what they are written. This is different from what we will be discussing in the next few slides. They are either oral reports and written reports. This is on the medium, the channel, on the way they are presented. That is, when you speak, you report to a person. It could be a presentation, or when you're reporting, giving a report orally, that is your oral report. When you're reporting in a written manner, it could be a letter, memorandum, an agenda, a notice, or a report, a formal report, that becomes a written report. Then besides that, the report can be informal or formal. Sometimes you have to report formally. It could be either oral or written. You report formally, you write down and send it, or you give an oral presentation, or you formally in front of a meeting give a lecture in a conference, or you describe anything in a those are formal reports. Informal are when you do not actually formally report those things, but you just inform the people, the required people, that is, it could be your bosses, it could be your subordinates, about what is going to happen, what has happened, or what they should anticipate might happen. So those with that distinction is informal or the formal reports. Then there are the statutory and the non-statutory reports. The statutory reports are those which the organization or you are legally bound to give. by the rules and regulations of the government and by law. You are supposed to make those reports. These could be your the reports that you prepare for your stockholders. You have to give them report to them. They're the annual reports. They are the government. Those are statutory reports because the government wants you to inform your stakeholders who invested in your organization and company as to how what are the functionings, how much profit the company has made. Similarly, the tax reports, the auditing reports, the all these are the statutory reports. How much profit the company made, the cost and profit, the how much tax they need to pay. All these are statutory reports. Then there are the non-statutory reports. Non-statutory reports are those which are not necessitated by the government that you make them or write them. You make them and as a part of your organizational functioning. Those are non-statutory reports. Any other which is not law, which is not as per the requirement of the government or law, those anything, it could be a letter to the even a press release or a press conference or a launch of a new product, those are all non-statutory reports. Then there are the routine reports and the special reports. Any report can be any of them. It could be oral, it could be informal, it could be non-statutory, it could be a routine report. You inform as per your day's work. You need to inform the people about what you did not do, or what was done, whether the task was done or were not done, to inform, to direct, to inform, etc. The special reports are which are formed for a special reason. The reason could be any problem which has occurred. So you investigate the reason of the problem and you come up with a report as to why this problem occurred, what are the alternatives, what are the action plan that need to be taken, etc. So those become the special reports. And another example of special reports would be when there are some changes, or you are launching a new, you want and launch a new product. So those, then on the basis of the new product, on the basis of the way it needs to be launched, the positioning of the product, etc., everything will be mentioned. So special situations or special cases, those become the special reports. Informational and interpretative reports. Informational are those reports, the special reports, which are for just, which provide information as to the functioning of the organization, information as to how much sales was done, information as to how much procurement of the raw material, how much inventory information, or it could be the supply chain information, or any other information. It could be even a research work which is done for the sake of information, an exploratory research work in which you want to get more insight into any particular domain or any particular subject or topic. So then you just dig about and get more information. So those are informational reports. Interpretative reports are those in which you try and interpret. You gather data, you analyze the data. On the basis of those analysis, you develop interpretations. You interpret what is you interpret the data and you come up with conclusions, and on the basis of those conclusions you come up with recommendations. So there, where the analysis takes place, where there is quantitative analysis which takes place, or even without quantitative analysis, through whatever insight you gain, you try interpret something through the data, whatever, when by talking to people or by just communicating, getting some form fills, or such just observation or an experiment that you've done. So whatever data is collected, you interpret the data, analyze the data, and then you get a result. On the basis of the result, you get your implications, your and conclusions that you draw, and based upon those will be the recommendations. So these are the various different types of reports which you might be making. So you have to know the classification. It could be oral as well as informal, as well as non-statutory and routine, and an informational function. So one report can be any of these one category, but it cannot be both. Now moving on to the various types of reports. Number one, let us discuss the project reports. Now, what are project reports? Project reports, these are prepared after making a thorough study about the feasibility of a project. Now, the organization or your team or your department is coming up with one particular project. This project could be any project depending upon your work situation. Once you study the feasibility is whether the project can run or not run, or whether it can be successful. If it is, whether it can be successful or not, what are the requirements for the project, everything will come under the project report. The investments required, the technical feasibility, the financial viability, the market viability, the cost profitability, the working capital arrangements, and other relevant information. All this will come in your project report. Even the cost benefit analysis and everything, every detail as to how will it function. If supposing the viability is there, how will it function, what are the needs, how to upstart the project, every single detail needs to be mentioned in this particular project report. The next category is the progress reports. The progress reports are the evaluation reports that facilitate monitoring. Now, how has your subordinates performed? You will have to make up an appraisal, performance appraisal, whether their performance was up to the mark or not, whether the performance was up to the standard, and did they follow the rules and the regulations or not. So, did they meet the set standards? If they did not, what was the deviation from this set standards? If the deviation was there, what were the corrective measures which were applied for to overcome those deviations? So these are basically monitoring techniques to monitor that the work is being performed as per the requirement of the organization. Moving on to the status reports. The status reports, they tell us about the progress report which explicates the state of the project. Now, once the project has started, there is certain thing which is being done. Then in between, you have to keep on giving the higher authorities the status. Let them know what is the status of your progress. That you have done the work. Yes, the time. Are you doing the work within, whether the task was being done within time frame or not? If it is being done in the appropriate manner, if there are any discrepancies in the status of the work, all this need to be mentioned in this particular report. Moving on to the periodic reports. The periodic reports, these are the routine reports, the regular reports which are sent. They are sent at periodical intervals, daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, annual reports, or sometimes biannual reports or bi-monthly reports. They are the regular reports which you have to give. It could be daily. How much production was done daily, you fix the number and report. How much sales were done daily, you fix the number, you report that. So those are the daily ones, and these daily, usually the daily and the weekly or the fortnightly, the weekly and the daily usually do not require too much text. They have a fixed format which you just have to fill up and give it to them. The text one, the ones which have too much text or too much, they need too much thinking about it, thought process about it. Those are the monthly and especially the annual reports. Annual reports have to be very carefully and meticulously written. They need a lot of information which has to be investigated, analyzed, and then finalized. So depending upon the time frame or the frequency of the report, you have to frame it accordingly. Moving on to the objective is basically of these reports is to record and inform about the information which is being anything which about the organization. Inspection reports. Inspection reports, these are supervisory in nature. They need to inform the top authorities about the state of affairs, how is the work being done. You must have seen even in schools, even in colleges, and even in otherwise organizations, there are surprise inspections. Sometimes they just come as a surprise to inspect what are the safety, whether the safety measures are being followed in the organization or not, or whether the correct teams are doing the thing, work is being done in the correct manner. So these kind of inspection reports, then the people who come for inspection, they formulate a report a formal report, a written report, which they send to their superiors or the higher authorities. They are again more of a control mechanism which they are trying to follow. Now next is the investigation reports. To investigate any discrepancies, any fraud, any corruption or any complaint. Now if there is a problem, if there is a discrepancy, if there is a fraud which was done, then the higher authorities will set up a team, a committee who will investigate this problem, any fraud which has happened. They will come, sit and research, do a thorough research, go through the data available, talk to the people and try and investigate as to what went wrong and who is the culprit and who is to be blamed. So and then they present their report. Similarly, in case of a complaint, if there is a problem, if it could be a sexual harassment complaint by the opposite gender, then they also file a complaint. Again, investigation is done. A committee is a group of people are compiled together to form a committee and to investigate upon the matter, about the complaint, and they come up with a report, and then the higher authorities act accordingly. Interim reports. Interim reports are those whenever the submission of report takes longer duration then the interim reports are submitted for quick assessments. These are the intermediate is once the project is complete, once there is a project report which is at the beginning of the report. Once the project is complete, then there is a completion report which is next in the line of reports. In between there is an interim report. This is submitted to keep the higher authorities informed as to the status of the project, how much it has done, what are the needs, how much it needs to do more, and etc. etc. Any changes from the which are needed, any deviations or any corrective measures which are being used, etc. etc. All the details are mentioned. The resources, the amount of resources used, the amount of resources left, the amount of resources needed, the manpower, the people functions, everything comes under this interim report. Completion report. Completion report is at the completion of a project. This report is about the execution of the final phase of work or completion. Once the work is complete or is about to be completed, then you compile a report and then you give it to the higher authorities as to the work was finished, the task completed, and the details of the completion of the project also are given. Research report. Research is identification of a problem, setting a hypothesis, gathering information, analyzing the information, recording the findings and the suggestions. Now, research work takes time. It's a very time-consuming work, and it also takes time to compile up the reports. Usually, the research reports are or the thesis or the dissertations that the people present are thick in volume. That is, it could be anywhere between 100 to 300, 400 number of pages, but they have to also follow a certain set pattern. They need to follow, first they identify there is a very different format for them. After the first few initial pages which we will be discussing later, the first thing is the statement of the problem as to what is the problem, the basic problem as to for which the report, the research work was done. Then you set up with hypothesis. There are various forms of hypothesis. There is a null hypothesis and there are number of hypotheses besides the null hypothesis which are formulated. These are the official formal techniques of doing research. So these hypotheses are formulated. It could be any number, 8, 9, 10, and then or there is also a null hypothesis. Then you start working on the basis of these hypothesis. You start gathering information. So in a research report, there is one page identifying the problem, then there is the hypothesis, and after that the information, the data as to how the data was collected. What is the data which was collected? The data could be the secondary data and the primary data. Secondary data usually comes first, which is in the literature review, the literature that you have reviews, and then comes the secondary data as to the data which was the primary data as to how you gathered the primary data. Then you analyze the information. You analyze the primary data using your statistical tools. You come up with some certain kind of results. So those will be your recordings or your findings. What did you discover, or what did you find out on the basis of your search? These will be based upon your analysis of the information collected, or the analysis of the data that you've collected. Once you have the finding in your hands, you have the conclusion in your hand, and this is what you conclude, you come up with the suggestions. The suggestions will be as to what kind of measures will be an answer to the problem which was identified initially in the beginning of the research. So a research has a very detailed, uh, complicated, not complicated, but a detailed structured format which needs to be followed to be presented. Now moving on to oral and written reports. On the basis of the communication medium, we demark as the oral and the written report. An oral report is a face-to-face communication of an impression or an observation that you make. It is comparatively informal and more time-saving. It is simple and easy to present, but has to be heard carefully, because to hear an oral report, you need to have good listening skills. Otherwise, you will miss certain points, and you will overlook certain things. You have to have good listening skills and observe and listen carefully. A written communication, you can go back and read what is intended to be written. But in an oral communication, you cannot ask the person to go back to what he had said. Sometimes he cannot say it in the same manner. So you have to be a good listener, develop good empathetic and active listening skills. It can be vague and provides no record for future reference. Now, this is one of the things, unless and until you record it, it does not provide you with a record for a future reference. And it can be at times lack clarity, because sometimes when you are speaking, you lose track of what you are speaking and what you are intending to speak, and the clarity could be less. It could be for any reason: the language, the accent, the pronunciation, or too much was being spoken. So for any reason, it can be vague and provide no record for future reference. Formal and informal reports. Now, formal reports are, this demarcation is there on the basis of the format and the procedures adopted. An informal report can be casually written and just submitted, and an informal report needs to be written in a particular format, and a layout needs to be observed. An informal report is usually in the form of a person-to-person communication. You do not present it, or you do not, you may write down a few points. Just if it's a written informal report, you just jot down a few points and submit it to the person. Okay, these are the points you need to take care of, or this is going to happen in this sequence. So those are informally. But formally, when you have to write, you have to follow a set format, a set layout that needs these are the you have to write the heading, the addressing, the salutations, and this is to be followed to who and to the person, and the thank you and the person's name in the end. So though that becomes a formal report. And it may the informal report, it may range from a few lines to several pages also, but a formal report is presented in a prescribed form, the format which has been prescribed by the organization, or which is a general norm of writing that particular report. For example, letter, you all know what is the norm of writing a letter. Now these days, the various categories, various things which need to be written in a letter, you cannot afford to miss them. And in fact, there are certain other things which you need to take care of when you're writing a letter. The spacing, there are certain places where you need to leave a single line space. After once you've written the address, and when you go to the salutation, or before you write the, after your subject and reference you have written, you need to leave a single line or a double line space, single line space. And similarly, when you finish the letter, when you're writing your sincerely, etc., and your name, you again need to leave a single line space. So this kind of a thing you need, this is a prescribed format for letter writing. Similarly, there is a prescribed format for report writing, for report, and again there is a prescribed format for an academic report and a business report. So everything you need to know and follow. It is prepared in accordance with an established procedure and is submitted to a prescribed authority. To summarize what we have just said, the classification of report entails assessment of the content of the report on the basis of the purpose, the frequency, urgency, the mode of the presentation, or the statutory requirements. Reports can be oral or written. We have just discussed the oral and the written, the formal or the informal, statutory or the non-statutory. Statutory, the ones which are you are bound by law or government rules, according to the government rules, and non-statutory, which you are in which there is no government bounding, which are you are not legally bound to give, but you make them in for the functioning of the organization. The statutory ones are your tax assessments, your audit reports. All these are statutory. Then there are the routine reports or the special reports. The routine reports are those which are prepared daily or weekly, and or on the basis there are special dates and when you have to prepare those reports, and the special reports are for special purposes with special objectives in mind. Informational or interpretative. Informational are those which are for the information, for gathering information and to inform the audience, the readers, about whatever information they have gathered. And interpretative are those in which some analysis was required. It could be analysis by the statistical tools, or it could be just analysis when you analyze the situation and come up with the solution. Then reports can also be project reports. Project reports are those for the function for the beginning of a project, which try and gauge the feasibility of the project. Inspection reports. Inspection reports are those on the basis progress reports, defining and describing the progress of the project. The status reports, the current status of the project. The periodic reports, the periodic, again like periodical, monthly, weekly, annually or biannually. Inspection reports. Inspection reports are those which are um, when there are inspections, there are committees which are organized to do surprise inspection or inspect the safety, whether the safety rules are being followed, whether the health standards are being followed or not, etc. So then there are the investigation reports, when you investigate any discrepancies which have happened or investigate any complaint which has come up with. And the interim reports. Interim reports are those which are in between the completion of the project, when the project has started but it is halfway through, or maybe three little bit is read. So intermediate reports are known as the interim reports. The completion reports are those which are when on the completion of the project you give the report that the project was complete. The research reports are those on the basis when you do certain research work, which you will have to do. You will have to prepare a research report also at the end of your MBA, and it has a specific format, a specific layout which you need to follow. So that will be all. Thank you.